Bonjour à tous. J'ai juste une petite annonce à vous passer avant le début de l'enseignement. Tout d'abord, nos excuses. Hier, on vous a vendu le fait que vous pourriez vous inscrire aux tâches communautaires. Il n'y avait pas les listes. Donc, pour ceux qui ont une frustration débordante, aujourd'hui, les listes sont là. Et une deuxième annonce, c'est pour les centres urbains, pour les KTT et les groupes du Dharma. On a reçu le nouveau programme de octobre à mai. Et donc, pour les personnes responsables des centres urbains, vous pouvez venir les récupérer au secrétariat. Donc, c'est à partir d'aujourd'hui jusqu'à samedi, de 14h30 à 17h. Donc, c'est au rez-de-chaussée de l'Institut. Donc, de jeudi, aujourd'hui, jusqu'à samedi, 14h30, 17h, venez chercher les programmes. Ce sera utile pour les centres. Merci à tous et bon enseignement.
Sanji Chodan Soji Chonam La Chanchu Bardo Dane Chamsu Che So Jibe Sanam Chendro La Benchra Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chodan Soji Chonam La Chanchu Bardo Dane Chamsu Che Dage Jensu Jibe Sanam Che Drola Benchra Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chodan Soje Chonam La Chanchu Bardo Dane Chamsu Che Dage Jensu Jibe Sanam Che Benchra Sanje Drobar Sho Simche Tamche Dewa Dan Devi Jodan Dembar Churche Dongara Dan Dongara Che Jodan Jawara Churche Dongara Mebe Tamba Dan Mendra Churche Nyere Chadan Dan Jarve Nyo Bola Neba Churche Semje Tamje Deve Jodan Dembar Churche Dongre Che Jodan Jawar Churche Dongre Mebe Dewa Tamba Ta Mendra Churche Nyeren Chadan Dan Jave Danyom Chembo La Neba Churche Semche Tamche Dewa Dan Deve Jodan Dembar Churche Dongara Dan Dongara Che Jodan Jawar Churche Dongara Mebe Dewa Tamba Dan Mendra Churche Nyeren Chadan Dan Jarve Danyom Chembo La Neba Churche Jomden de Jambe Yang Lai Chan Tsai Loi Kange Lo Dren Dren Nye Dren Dren Nye Dara Nam Daram Sarve Chinye Tungun Chi Shin Si Chi Ni Je Tokara Le Bam Kanda Sebe Tsara Mari Mundama Dongara Che Serve Dro Tso Kun La Puji Tarse Yin La Chuju Yang Den Song Dro Dara Che Dro Nyumo Nye Long Le Je Cha Dro Dro Ze Che Mari Munse Dongara Nyugu Chinye Chun Ze Ra Je Dene taje saju tarsun yun dene luzo gerse tuvu ku juja judan juni jenje dalu mun seren jambe yang lai du seden chuje chenra vusir che dalu demu mun barab saran Gadan denju shun lu to ba ye lu zhu bo bia na wa tsar du sur. Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everybody. So we are starting our second day studying the Aryabharyachara Paridhana Raja. that is translated as the King of Aspiration prayers. But more precisely, it is called the King of Aspiration prayers of noble, excellent activity. Excellent activity can also be translated as Samantabadhra. So first we talked about the source of this text, and then we talked about the framework of that text, meaning here presenting the great vehicle, because it's a text of the great vehicle. And in order to study or to understand the great vehicle, we looked at the various vehicles in Buddhism and how they are to be applied to one's own approach and one's own understanding. And in particular, first regarding one's own motivation. In order to distinguish that, we talked about what the so-called liberation from the four attachments, Shenpa Shedul in Tibetan. Meaning to get rid of the four attachments. It's a teaching that was received by Sacha Kunga Ningpo when he was 12 years old. He was in retreat, in meditation retreat, meditating Manjushri, and he got a vision of Manjushri that taught him those 4 points. First of all, if we are attached to that very life, we aren't a Buddha practitioner. So we talked about that first point. And then the second point, Korwachena Ngejun mean, if we are attached to samsara, we haven't developed the so-called Ngejung in Tibetan, most often translated as renunciation, renouncement, but we will talk about that word more precisely later. And then the third point, Darden Lashena Jansen mean, if you are attached to your own good, the one that is attached to his own good hasn't generated bodhicitta. And then the fourth point, Zinbachuna Tawamin. If there is grasping, there is no view. Those are the 4 points. So somehow in that stanza we can find the meaning of the different approaches of Buddhism in a general way. Of course, the ultimate goal or the final goal is liberation from conditioned existence, from samsara. This is the way we accomplish our ultimate benefit. But also, according to Mahayana, if we accomplish the perfect enlightenment, in Tibetan, meaning the enlightenment that is not fixed, or that is not fixed neither in nirvana nor in samsara. Meaning here it comprehends both of them and go beyond both of them. And if so, then we are able to accomplish sentient beings' benefit all the time. So that's the ultimate goal in the great vehicle. And in the common vehicle, it's liberation from samsara, from suffering. It's just a simple obtention of nirvana. So there is a difference concerning the ultimate goal, and we can also distinguish a temporary goal. It's about ameliorating our situation in samsara, getting more wellness, feeling better inside samsara itself. So most often in Tibetan we use ngonto nyele. Ngonto means getting higher in samsara, getting more fortunate destinies in samsara. And ngelek means excellence, ultimate perfection of enlightenment. So Dharma is not as we can see maybe somewhere else, where it is about sacrificing oneself, suffering, and practice means as ascetic practice, and choosing some kind of suffering right now for the ultimate salvation. The ultimate salvation doesn't mean we shouldn't experience any wellness right now. Here, Dharma practice at the same time ameliorates our present condition, the right now condition, and it also serves to accomplish ultimate goal, ultimate good. So that is here a very important point that we should keep in mind. So according to our understanding, access to those fruits, those results depends on our way of practicing, our one's understanding, and it's also indissociable from our motivation. Meaning what preoccupies us, what concerns us. Meaning, usually we don't think much about beyond this life, the consequences of our action, what will happen beyond this life, because our actions are only important within this life framework. So here, of course, there is an important principle in Buddhism, which is the notion of past and future lives. Meaning that we take rebirth, we took uncountable rebirth in the past, and we will take more rebirth in the future. And the practice, in a way, is about to get rid of that cycle of rebirth. Because somehow in those different successive lives we never get rid of that suffering, that pain. Pain is always there. So in Buddhism we say there is no I also. Some people say those 2 points are a bit difficult to associate, meaning on one hand the affirmation that there are past and future lives, and on the other hand the Buddhist affirmation saying there is no I. So sometimes people ask me, what takes rebirth? If there is no I, what takes rebirth? So maybe here it's important to clarify that point. Of course, the I, what do we mean with I when we say I? There are many doctrines that describe the I. But first of all, it's a kind of feeling or intuition that we have, through which we grasp an I, and we consider our whole existence as a full entity that is different from others, and that entity is one and permanent. For example, we will say, we see a child, then a grown person, then an old person, and we think underlying there is one person that is the same person. His body changed, his behavior changed, his understanding probably changed, but we think still there is something permanent within him. It's kind of the basis of that ego grasping. So it's the basis of I and the basis of what we input there. And it also implies the cherishing of I, the attachment to I, meaning this believing. With that belief comes the I cherishing, meaning I am for myself the most important. It's kind of underlying under any of our action, under any of our thought, that I. So to answer the first question, what does take rebirth if it's not the I? So here I'm bringing up the topic. You can think on your own. You can think by yourself. So, as I was saying, first we have to understand what means I. So if we saw that entity, supposing, thinking there is an I. So the notion of being, it's an entity. However, when Buddhism says there is no such an entity, then it means such a permanent and unique entity can't exist. And it's not about it's a Buddhist dogma, and if you don't believe so, you will get punished or something. It's not like that. You are invited to analyze by yourself. Once you've understood what do you actually call an I, can we really find it? Where is it? What is it? How can we observe it considering ourselves? We have a body, right? And that body is made of different organs, different elements, right? But also we have the so-called thought, the mind, the aspect of consciousness. We are conscious. Through our consciousness, our senses, we perceive things, shapes, colors, sounds. We also have concepts, representations in our mind. So all those elements, all those parts are called the five aggregates in the Buddhist tradition, the five physical and psychical elements. So the physical aspect is most often comes from rupa in Sanskrit, meaning the body, the physical aspect. And then there are four other aggregates, which are all mind aggregates, or psychic elements. So we have the toucher, perceptions, toucher in Tibetan, so perceptions in English. So it is, this is the capacity to distinguish. For example, if you are in the street and you hear or see people, colors, sound, and within all those sounds, if someone hears your name, you have that capacity of grasping that sound. You know, oh, someone is calling me. This is samkhya in Sanskrit, or dushe, or perception. It's like mental representation. It's the capacity of grasping a characteristic. Those are our representation, our thoughts, the way we distinguish phenomena. And you also have feelings, pleasant and unpleasant feelings, painful feelings. And we also have the so-called consciousnesses, or consciousness. So basically there is consciousness and its different aspects. So usually we think consciousness as being one. And when we identify an I, we don't really think about our body, we rather think about our consciousness. It's the thing that experiences. It's like the things sitting on the driver's seat. The thing that knows, that thing. This is the thing I usually identify as an I. So consciousness, we usually think it as a substantial entity that is one. But in Buddhism, in Buddhist literature, we talk about consciousnesses, plural, because to our senses we have 5 consciousnesses: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, tactile consciousness, and also mental consciousness. For example, the eye perception can see all shapes and forms, but it doesn't necessarily distinguish red from other colors. It's the mental consciousness that will distinguish them. And on that basis come different notions, representations, concepts, and all. So sometimes in Abhidhammas, we have a more elaborate presentation. For example, the 51 mental factors that come together with the 6 consciousnesses. And then in the Yogacara, the 6 consciousness has 2 other aspects. It goes deeper. We talk about the confused consciousness that is mistaken and grasp an I, and the consciousness that is the all basic, all-knowing consciousness. That is the basis, the recipient for all karmic disposition, alaya vijnana. And those consciousnesses come together with mental factors like the all-time present mental factors and all. So if we look in detail, we find neither from the body perspective, neither from the mind perspective, any entity that exists by itself, independently, that remains the same, that would remain the same, and that would be then the I we are actually grasping. We only find a gathering of various elements that are mutually dependent, that are codependent, and that are constantly changing, are constantly impermanent. There is no substantial permanent entity that would correspond in any way to an I that we are actually grasping, because the I we are grasping means one, something permanent. It thinks to a being. So the reason why we say there is no I is simply because we can look as much as we want, we can't find it. We can look in detail, we can dissect as much as we want, we don't find any element that would remain the same in time, that is an irreducible entity, permanent.
Alors, est-ce pour autant on a trouvé absolument
But still, is there nothing?
on a trouvé le néant?
Did we find nothingness?
On a trouvé le jeu,
If we didn't find the I, we may fall on the other extreme and find nothing. I actually mentioned the middle way. One extreme is eternalism, meaning to think there is an I, there is a soul. In other Indian tradition, we talk about Atman. It's the affirmation there is an eternal entity. It's the belief that there is an eternal entity. And then the other extreme, nihilism, is thinking there's nothing, I am nothing. However, there are qualities here, the consciousness quality, mind that knows, that understands. So it's not an entity that corresponds to our I representation. And here, grasping an I hinders the view of reality, hinders the view of original primordial reality. So the original reality of mind is there is no proper entity. It's neither existing nor non-existing, neither the opposite of those two. Mind has no shape, no color, we can't grasp it. But even though we can't find it, there is this knowledge aspect, there is that capacity to knowledge, to experience. We call it luminosity in Buddhist literature, linked to light itself, luminosity. So that instant of experience, we don't need to find it, look for it. It's present here in every instant of experience. Is the foundation of all our reality. All our reality is that experience of luminosity, and we are actually mistaken, thinking there is a substance here. We think there is experience, so there is something that experiences, and then we reify a subject, an object, and all. However, those are only representations, reifications of an I in itself. But when we really observe within ourselves, we can't find it. So it's that luminosity, emptiness that manifests. Temporarily, we can talk about a continuity of instant, even if one instant is not something irreducible that we could find. The past, the present, or the future aren't findable. We can't grasp them. However, there is no discontinuity. We can't find its birth, we can't find its cessation. So we see a kind of continuity, and that continuity is the present moment. It allows the next instant to arise, which is a condition for the next instant to arise, and so on. So there is a continuity without beginning nor end to the mind. So it's that mind that takes rebirth, that very mind. However, even the idea of rebirth is not possible with a substantial entity. If something is substantial, it can't take rebirth, because to take rebirth would mean to change. And it is because there is no I that there is rebirth, actually. So when we look a bit closer, we can see there is no contradiction here. It's the only possible explanation, actually. In other cases, we reify, we think there is something, we think there's something permanent, substantial. So how something permanent without losing its permanent could take rebirth? So when we understand that we are somehow always in a becoming, and our future becoming depends on our present thoughts and actions, because somehow it conditions our becoming. So our thoughts and action are the predominant force associated with our the phenomena, our conditions, outside conditions, and all of them together determine our present. Our past actions determine our present, and our present determines that we are accomplishing right now. Conditions determines our future. So when we understand that, we see the importance of discipline, ethical discipline. And from there is a detachment from these life concerns, instead of being attached only to some appearances, happy experiences. We will rather turn to the understanding of causality and persevere in cultivating the causes of wellness, of happiness. And those causes are presented in ethical discipline. So now we can look at the second stanza, which is, if we are attached to samsara, then we don't have renunciation. So the word ngejong, usually translated as renunciation, in French, I noticed this word renunciation makes us think it is about leaving behind, or it's most often associated to the idea of to forbid ourselves from a good. I have a good and I renounce from it. Depriving ourselves, restrain ourselves. So this can lead to misunderstanding. The Tibetan word ngejong has as a first meaning or literal meaning the definitive establishing. Definitive establishing, meaning it's the real entrance to the path to enlightenment. So of course here, underlying thought is that there is no interest anymore into samsara. We translated it as renunciation in our languages, but in real what it means is that we understood the defects of samsara. We are not deluded anymore by samsara. Why? Because we've seen its reality, why it is misleading us. Means we have understood dukkha, the first teaching of the Buddha, the teaching on suffering. So the first approach here is to say, I see the limits, I see the impermanence of life. For example, imagine that tomorrow, someone tells you tomorrow you're gonna die. Then you have grudge, you have you have grudge, you have projects, you have goods. If you're gonna die tomorrow, why should you bother about all of this right now? You won't have any grudge or resent anymore. Attachment to all your project won't make sense. So understanding impermanence is extremely important. Especially here, it's important regarding the first point. If we are attached to that life, we're not a Dharma practitioner. How can we be attached to that life if we understand how impermanent it is, how temporarily it is, how ephemeral it is? Because if we understand that everything's going to disappear, we're not going to be able to grasp anything. It's already it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense because that project, because it's so temporarily, it doesn't make sense. If you look in the past, how many emperors, how many kings were there? What was the good for them? They lost everything. They were much more powerful than us. Some were more intelligent, more strong, more rich than us. They were much richer. They had many people, thousands of people believing in themselves, but they had to die. So their project from the beginning was born to die. So that is just the reality of phenomena. Why? Because phenomena are impermanent. And because we don't understand that very point, we are so attached to this life. We are so attached to those grudges, those little things, our goods. So here that understanding means to a real disinterest. So we talked about temporary happiness and samsara. For example, you, me, others, we have temporary happiness and samsara. We can be attached to that, thinking, oh, it's not going to last forever, so I'm going to enjoy it while it's there. And we can be attached to that. And this is where the second understanding is important, to understand dukkha. If we understand dukkha, we see that even when it's there, we think it's happy, we think it's really nice, but in reality there is nothing really pleasant. Pleasure, when we have it too long, becomes unpleasant. When pleasure is there for too long, it becomes unpleasant. It's just a way of grasping. It's a new experience that we see as pleasure. But it's not, in reality, it's not pleasure. It's no pleasure. So we always go after, we always create the causes of suffering, and we are mistaken with something we think is pleasure, but actually it's of the nature of suffering. So here it's an analysis of the feeling of pleasure. As long as we don't have pleasure, it's painful, we are waiting for it, and when we get it, we are drunk with pleasure, but when we have pleasure, where is really that pleasure? It's just a conditioned state, and it's born to decompose. So the more we analyze it, we see there is no condition in samsara. Whether actually we divide samsara, in Abhidharma we divide samsara in three big realms, the Kama Dhatu, Rupa Dhatu and Arupa Dhatu. So Kama Dhatu is the desire realm. It's where we are actually, and in that world are the 6 destinies, or 5 destinies, which are different life conditions. Some are unhappy, where the suffering is bigger. For example, there is what we can observe, the animal realm. And there are other conditions mentioned in text that we consider now. One of them is preta, the hungry ghost, some kind of ghost, which really suffer from lack of food, drink. They are thirsty, hungry all the time. And then we have naraka, the hells, the so-called hells, where the degree of suffering is extremely high. And then we have the happy destinies, humans, as we. And then if we follow the old description, there is the God realm. All those conditions are within the desire realm, characterized by a gross grasping or perception of an outside reality. A big separation between ourselves and the perceived reality. And then the two other realms or domains of samsara are described as being rupa and arupya, the form and formless realm. So rupa is the same word as we just talked about before in the aggregates. It's a physical world. It's an inner world that we can access to by the fact that our mind has reached a high degree of calmness, high degree of samadhi called dhyana. And we can cultivate it while we are alive, and when we die we can be reborn there. But those worlds are still within samsara. So it's called Rupa Dhatu because there is still a perception of outside phenomena. And in the Arupya Dhatu world, the formless realm, it's very much inside world, interior as well. So those worlds, and Arupya Dhatu especially, is of a very high joy, bliss. That bliss doesn't come from outside, but it comes from inside the mind. It comes from the inside mind capacity. But even that bliss, that joy, is a joy that doesn't understand the reality of mind, and the states are still conditions. So, in brief, whatever state you reach in samsara, there is nothing to be attached to. And this is in that way Korwa Shenang Ngenjung means there is no real entering on the path. There is no real entering on the path as long as there is attachment to samsara. And why are we attached to samsara? Because we are mistaken by samsara. We think, oh, I'm poor, I'm looking to a rich person's condition and I want to be rich. If I'm rich, I see someone richer. I want to be like him. If I'm human, I want to be a god. If I'm a god, I want to be a being from the formless realm because I want to obtain their bliss. So all in all, whatever condition we have, there is another condition there. So everything that is conditioned is impermanent by nature. So why are things impermanent temporarily? Why do they change? They change because they are conditioned. They depend on causes and conditions. They aren't established by themselves. So in that sense, if we look, actually, all life states in samsara are undesirable. So understanding the suffering, the inner suffering to conditioned existence will bring us to developing wisdom, perfect enlightenment, the beyond suffering. So this is really the motivation, the basis to the entrance of the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha vehicle. That is the foundation, that is the common teaching to all the Buddhist traditions, to all Buddhist tradition. So we can see here that our own interest is actually to liberate from suffering. And our real good is to get there to the beyond of suffering. So nirvana is what it actually means, beyond suffering, the state beyond suffering. So then the next stanza from the three detachments. If we are attached to our own good, we don't have bodhicitta. So here, those understanding complete each other. It's not like those approaches are separated, those sentences are separated and will exclude each other. A first understanding gives room or rise to the next one, and a deeper understanding includes the less, the more superficial understanding. So the vehicles are a little bit like steps. The one leads to the other one, which is a deepening and all. So in that approach, where we are attached to our own ultimate good and our own beyond suffering, that approach is very limited. To use a French expression, it's the Buddha that put water in his wine. This is what we say in French. It means the Buddha diluted his teaching to make it accessible. He had, if he directly taught the bodhisattva way, for the benefit of the bodhisattva has no attachment. He doesn't care much about enlightenment if it's not beneficial for all sentient beings. It's not something that corresponds to our usual intuition, which is usually we are so self-centered, right? So if I say the Buddha put water in his wine, here I mean he's very pedagogical. He really makes an effort for people to understand him. So for the people ordinarily attached to an I can go beyond that attachment. For that, he teaches what is the personal ultimate good, but at the same time, he shows there is no I. The ultimate good goes through detachment from I. So the Bodhisattva's approach is closer to Buddha's approach, meaning that the Buddha realized non-self. There is no pursuit or attachment to any I. And this is present here when we talk about bodhicitta or enlightened mind. This is a very, very important word, especially for the text we're going to study and to understand the great vehicle. So what is bodhicitta? So this word was translated as enlightened mind. Bodhi means enlightenment. It means the fact of reaching enlightenment, to enlighten, And Chitta is the state of mind. So, enlightened mind. Janchup Kisem in Tibetan.
Donc là, évidemment, ultimement,
So, of course, ultimately, enlightened mind is only enlightenment. It's the reality of our mind, the original reality of our mind. It's the ultimate bodhicitta. When the ultimate bodhicitta is perfectly accomplished, it's enlightenment. It's the perfect Buddhahood. It's the full and perfect actualization of our primordial state of mind. But in order to understand that, because we are in delusion, the dispositions to dualistic grasping, the predispositions are really strong. We are really mistaken, and because of that illusion, we can only access to that progressively, gradually. Somehow, mind's ultimate state doesn't need to be created. It already exists, it's already there. So here is the Buddha nature's notion, meaning our mind ultimate state, that is luminosity and emptiness indissociable, joined together. Whether we recognize it or not, it's our mind's true nature. It never changes, it won't ever change. But there is the fact of actualizing it or not, recognizing it or not. So enlightenment is not something to be created, it's something to discover. So according our own capacity, our own understanding, we can discover it more or less easily, and we can establish ourselves completely or not. So we talk about a gradual path, considering that discovering and that actualization. So it's a path through which we eliminate ignorance and afflictions. Ignorance and afflictions have been so much cultivated for so much time in the past. They are so strong in ourselves that they can't instantly be cleared away, dissipate. So the path is mostly about eliminating ignorance. It's about eliminating ignorance. So ultimate bodhicitta can be characterized by emptiness indissociable from great compassion. So emptiness itself is actually wisdom. It's recognizing reality as it is, perfect, spontaneously endowed with compassion. So it's a non-dual compassion, a compassion that has a disposition to help sentient beings that don't understand what is reality. It's endowed with kindness, understanding, and all. And then, more relatively speaking, at our own level, we talk about a bodhicitta-like thing. Kunzop ki chanchu kisem samriddhi bodhicitta. This sometimes we call it relative bodhicitta. So it's a bodhicitta that looks like the ultimate bodhicitta. It's a kind of bodhicitta that, even though we haven't realized emptiness nor compassion, can be generated. So here bodhicitta comes under the shape of a motivation, an intention. And that motivation is moved by love universal love and compassion towards all beings without any exception. So even now, in our present condition, which is confusion, in our present confusion, we have that capacity to express an infinite kindness, a limitless kindness. And it is the intention of that kindness, the affirmation of that kindness, expressing that to a vow that is the vow of reaching alignment for the benefit of all being without any exception. Meaning here, making that wish, having that firm intention, sincere, full intention. And that in that wish there is included compassion, loving kindness, and an immense, a very, very great courage. Meaning here that we deliberately in advance choose that all difficulties that imply such an engagement, we won't get discouraged. It's a promise we take in front of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and it's also a promise we do to all sentient beings. From now on, I won't harm them at all, and all the time I will try to help them, to serve them, to be at their service, and not only for temporary happiness, so that also they can obtain ultimate enlightenment. So that's the meaning of relative bodhicitta. Usually it's also distinguished in terms of vow itself, in terms of intention, and in terms of application, aspiration and application. So the relative bodhicitta of aspiration is moved by compassion. We want the good of all sentient beings. And the relative bodhicitta in application is the engagement in the bodhisattva's way, bodhisattva's conduct. And according to our capacity from now on, we will apply ourselves to sentient beings' benefit. So the bodhisattva's practice can be resumed as the 6 parameters. So it's 11 for, we're going to have a short break and we'll come back on the bodhisattva's practice after the break. And I'll give you some time for questions and answers. You can think about the point we talked about, the things we talk about right now, and get ready with your questions.
cham so chi da gen jin so ji be san nam ji ro la pen chra san ji ro ba shu san ji chu dan cu ji chu nam la chan chu bar do da ne cham so chi da ge jin so ji be san nam chi ro la ben chra san ji ro ba shu sem ji tam ji de wa dan de ve ju dan den ba chu chi dong er dan dong er ji ju dan cha wa chu chi dong er me be de wa tam ba dan min ra wa chu chi nye rin cha dan dan cha ve dan nyam chen bo la ne ba chu chi chum den den jam be yang lai chan tsai lo kan ge lo dren dim nye dren dra nye dara nam da rab sar ve chi nye tun gun chi jin si ji ni che to kar le bam tse kanda si be tsun ra ma ri mun tum dong ra chi sir ve gun la pu ji dar se yin la zhu ju yang den song ru dar che ro nyu mo ni lo le je cha ro ro se je ma ri mu se dong ra nyu go chi ni chun ze ra je nam dene ta chen sa ju tar sen yun ten lu zo gyar se tu yu ko chu cha chu ta chu ni jen da lu mu se ren chan be yang la du tse den chu je chen ra vu zre che da lu te mo men ba rab sar ka da den ju shun lu to ba ye lu zhe bo be na wa tsar tu sur je propose que
So I propose that we take more time for discussions and questions. We talked about many subjects this morning. Maybe a few clarifications are needed. So the mic is yours. So the question is, thank you Rinpoche for your teaching. My question is about ethical discipline with the understanding of causality and the causes of suffering. My personal reflection takes me to look at my personal situation, and slowly I abandon my references, and it changes my existence. It changes the way I interact in my life, and my perception is with a lot of disillusion and some sadness to see that I'm not able to remove everyone's suffering. So, what do you think about that? It's an important point here. I think the subject of suffering in samsara and the feeling of sadness may discourage us. So what is important here is to try to reach a quality so-called equanimity. So equanimity shouldn't be mistaken with indifference. Indifference. So equanimity can be practiced the following way. It's considering all sentient beings, considering that often the feeling of discouragement comes mostly from our attachment, because we so much want things to be in a certain way, and things, and we see that things can't be better. We see that there is suffering. That kind of this can lead to discouragement. So the so-called equanimity is, in brief, maybe I'm not going to go so deep because it's going to take too long, but it's just simply to be free of expectations, to be free of attachment, desires, and hostility, hatred, aversion. It's really a state of mind characterized by calmness, and on the basis of calmness we cultivate loving kindness and compassion. And compassion is endowed with, when compassion is endowed with equanimity, it's a compassion that will be there where it can. It will manifest where it can, where it is possible. It's not, we won't be discouraged or sad when we can't help. It's a little bit like, I want to help, but sometimes people don't want our help. So sometimes we may get irritated. But this is not equanimity. It is like, okay, they don't want, or I can't, it's beyond my personal means, or I don't have, today I don't have the capacity to help them. So what can I do at my own level, according to my own capacity? What can I do is to clear away my own ignorance. This is the first thing I can do. I can first try to stop harming them. And on that basis, I can develop the capacity to help them. So it's not like I can't do anything. I can always do something. I can always develop capacities, qualities through which I can help sentient beings. And actually, equanimity is the heart of equanimity. Compassion, kindness will be always there, and when the opportunity comes up, we won't be taken by our own comfort, our laziness. We will be able to act. So I'm not sure you can hear the question on YouTube, so maybe, yeah. I'm just gonna repeat it for the YouTube viewers. The question is about the fifth King Sutra. The last sutra is the Confession Sutra. So can you clarify the idea of confession, which is a very Christian notion? So here Rinpoche says that notion can be found in various religions, meaning finding a way to go beyond our past actions, purify our misdeeds. There are various prescriptions in various religions. In some religions, there are ascetic practices, mortifying practices, and in Catholicism, there are confessions through a priest. But I think here the question here is more specifically about the confession word. And I think here the idea that the translator wanted to bring up is to purify negative actions. So in Tibetan we have this term shakpa. So concretely, it's not practiced at all in the same way as in Catholicism, going to see a priest, telling our misdeeds, getting confessed and all. So it's not practiced in the same way at all, so it's not the same at all. Even though the same word is used, it's not the same thing. When we talk about shakpa, there is that idea, which is a bit common, of course, in the confession idea, to unveil, to declare, to recognize. It's simply to recognize that we did something negative, that we committed something negative. Here, if we don't recognize the negative as being negative, we get attached to it, so we can't liberate from it in the future. For example, if I committed a negative action like a murder, I'm attached. I can even be proud of it, thinking I did good, I did right. It was someone bad. Actually, it's not even a possibility. It's the case for many people who kill other people. They kill their enemy and all. As long as attachment is there, the predisposition linked to the action and the intention is present. And the fact that you may commit a new murder is reinforced. When the favorable circumstances will gather, we will naturally go to that direction. So the negative predisposition is there. Hostility, the hostility. We have hostility towards the other one. All the negative predisposition linked to our karma are there within ourselves. So we will come back on the subject of confession because we find it in the sutra, in the prayer we're going to study. There is the seven branch prayer preceding the wishes, and so it's part of the prayer itself. But in brief, if negative actions are not recognized, we can't get away from it. And I think this is the common notion in Christianism and Buddhism. There is the idea to declare our misdeed. If we recognize it is a misdeed, then we won't engage again in that. This is why they use that word But of course, the nature of the negative action, the way the negative action function, the way they are purified are presented differently. It's not the same way as in so I actually didn't do religious comparative studies. I'm not that qualified, but I know that anyway later we talk again about it in the prayer itself. And another part of the question was linked to renunciation. The link to renunciation. So renunciation is nge parchungwa in Tibetan. So linked to confession, we can understand that the negative action is harmful for myself, so I can get away from it. But I can also be attached to positive actions, seeing the fruit they can give, having good rebirth, having a good future, happy future, and we can be attached to also good actions. So in that sense, renunciation or nge parjongwa, meaning the fact to be really established on the way, on the path, is about understanding that all the samsara, whatever consequence it gives, meaning even if we get a happy fruition, a happy fruit, even if we become extremely wealthy, billionaire, if we use nowadays words, or in the past, if we want to be reborn as a god, even if those conditions are obtained, which those conditions are actually obtained only through positive actions, but even those conditions are illusion, they are not real happiness. Most often, such a happy condition can be future, can give rise to lots of suffering in the future. We will have, for example, a bigger harmful capacity. If you look, the powerful people in the world, they actually brought lots of people to war, where billion of people were killed, exploited. It's not so far in the past, actually. Some of them, like very big leaders, kings, they really exploited people and created a lot of suffering with their power. So it will take different shapes. Some will be because of desire, because of hatred. Because of desire or hatred, we can kill. There are many concrete examples. So in that way, even a happy condition is not something desirable, because even the happy condition is an illusion of happiness, and most often it's a kind of strength or power that we create future sufferings. There is nothing desirable there. So in that sense, for the Shravaka, the Pratyeka Buddha, the whole samsara is like fire. It's like flames. All the conditions of samsara are not pleasant, and they have no attachment to any conditions of samsara. There is a true desire to emancipate, to be free, completely free from suffering. So that is renunciation. It's much vaster and profound than the simple unveiling or confessing of mistakes or misdeeds. So we can confess negative actions on the basis of renunciation, but we can also do so on the basis of attachment to a positive fruit, and because we fear unhappy rebirth. It depends on our own understanding of samsara. So the same, a same practice, whether we do it because we want to obtain a happy rebirth in samsara, or if we do it on the basis of renunciation, meaning seeing the unhappy nature of samsara, or if we do it on the basis of bodhicitta, by love and compassion for all sentient beings. So the motivation itself changes the way we practice. And this morning you said that we could recognize the enlightened mind, the Buddha nature, the unborn in essence. So here, recognizing implies a kind of memory. So shall we keep even a tiny ego to experience that, or does the Buddha nature recognizes itself? How does it work actually? When we do contemplation, do we do it with a dualistic grasping, or can you clarify a little bit those points? So that's the whole subtlety or difficulty of the thing. For us, as ordinary beings, contemplating, seeing are transitive verbs that imply a subject and an object. However, here it's an intransitive understanding which is beyond any duality, any representation. No subject, no object. Together there are different means, different instructions. For example, bodhicitta, aspiration, cultivating love and kindness towards all sentient beings, attaining the different levels of serenity. All those are auxiliaries to recognizing the mind. Especially one of the means is extinguishing all the concepts. We will see the limit of all concept through analysis, analytic mind, the being, the non-being, both of them, neither of them, and therefore we extinguish concepts and representations, and we observe the unobservable with the non-observation that is intransitive, and that is something we can't just reduce to a simple concept. That's the whole difficulty here. It's very subtle. But it's not something we should consider as inaccessible, because it's just the reality of our mind. There was a great Mahasiddha, a female Mahasiddha, Sukhasiddhi. She taught that it is so near from us that we can't see it. It's so simple that we don't believe it. We think it has to be more complicated. Seeing the ultimate truth. So, as I was saying, the mind's reality, that is emptiness, luminosity, inseparable, that mind quality is seen in an intransitive way. Mind has the capacity of knowing, and mind knows itself without any duality. Take a moment and just observe right now. Don't think about anything else, just observe. Observe what observes, what understands. how does mind knows that it knows? How does mind knows that it knows? It doesn't need any other mind that would confirm it. So there it is. So in that reality we are always elaborating forms, shapes, concepts, representation, and all. It's a little bit like reflection in a mirror. A mirror can have clarity, quality, and a capacity. This is the quality of the mind. All the representations are possible because of that quality. But usually we only observe the reflection, the forms, shapes, and all that come. We don't look at the quality, the mirror's quality, which is the capacity to reflect. Thank you, Rinpoché. I have a slight problem to discriminate between attachment to that life and attachment to samsara. For me, it's the same. There is a difference. Some points are common, some points are different. So here it's important to understand. For example, in our modern world, a huge part of the world only believes in this life's reality. Why? Because they consider that what the so-called mind is a kind of epiphenomena, which is a derived product of the body that has no reality. And when there is no body, there is no consciousness anymore, and we become nothing. And in that case, what is ethical conduct or discipline? In that case, what is discipline? It's only then there is only society conventions so that my neighbor doesn't hit me. I will just try to do things that don't give me much problems. In that case, my actions have no consequence on my future, because when I die, I will just become nothing. There will be nothing. Then why should I be preoccupied in renouncing to hatred, dispelling desire, and so on? Why? Because in that case, I'm attached to that life. Everything is about getting a benefit for now, a profit from now. There's no more consequences. There is a Tibetan expression about that. If it's good, whether I die if it's good, whether I get fat or not doesn't matter, and whatever happens, if I get to my goal, it's fine. So there is no notion there of dispelling afflictions. It's just being attached to that life only. However, in the second case, we understand that there were past rebirths, there are future rebirths, there will be future rebirths. This life is temporarily impermanent, and even if I obtain something now, it's not something that will last. I have to think about my future well-being, my future happiness, and so I need to cultivate the future causes of happiness, meaning virtuous actions, which depend on my ethical discipline. And so here it's again being attached to samsara. I'm looking for happy circumstances. I want to avoid suffering. I want to get happiness. So that's the case for most of the people who engage into religious practice. Most of them have that kind of motivation, most of religions. In Buddhism, we are scared to go to hell. We are scared to be reborn as an animal. If we believe in God, we are scared that God punishes us. We want to get happy circumstances. We want to have a happy family. We want to have enough food, good clothes, a beautiful house. We want to be handsome or beautiful. We want to be in a good health. And we want to have it in the next life, in the future. And if possible, even more rich and even more beautiful. And then people will pray, knee down before the Buddha and pray, oh, may my business work good, may I get good work. And when we cannot pray ourselves, we go to the monk and ask them, please pray 100,000 times to Tara so that my business gets good and that I don't get sent to the court. There are thousand of requests like that in Tibetan monastery. All the monasteries are so busy doing rituals to accomplish people's wishes. Even here in Lebos, in Dhagpo, we receive lots of requests. Oh, pray for him, he was sick. Pray for that one that he gets a good rebirth. All those preoccupation for the well-being in samsara. Of course, naturally, we are attached in that. We are attached to samsara. We are attached to those. But understanding renunciation means understanding that whatever condition I obtain, even the best condition is temporarily, is of the nature of unsatisfaction or suffering, and it's not liberation. And then we orientate ourselves towards liberation of suffering. This is really the foundation to the entering the path. This is what should motivate us when we take refuge and when we engage on the path. So my question is about to not be attached to I and the all-ground basic consciousness. So attachment to I and all-ground consciousness or all-ground basic consciousness. So if I understand well, all the things we perceive are kind of kept in the all-ground consciousness, and they get out when times come. But now I think also that the all-ground consciousness is the same for everyone. Okay, so we all have all-ground consciousness, and how to do to not grasp the all-ground consciousness as an I. So to answer your question, so the Tibetan term for that is Kun Shi Nam She, all-ground consciousness. So Nam She is consciousness, all-ground is Kun Shi. it was translated like that. I don't know if it's so precise, but it's translated like that. So sometimes we distinguish between the two, meaning on one hand, the all-ground consciousness, so Kun Xi Nam Xie, which is linked to conditioned existence, samsara. So this is the basis of all. This is why ground may be confusing when we say ground. Here it's about all the karmic predispositions that are the foundation for dualistic experience. And it is that consciousness that is grasped as an I. It is grasped as an I, but its reality is not established in an I. So we can also just talk about Kunshi, but without talking about Namshe, because Namshe always implies duality. To be conscious, to be aware, means always duality, implies always duality. So in that case, we are talking about the reality of mind in an ultimate manner, which is free of any I. Which is what we talked about when we talked about the inseparability of luminosity and emptiness. When that reality, that state is not recognized, I is grasped. And then the basis consciousness is present. And which is the confused or mistaken aspect. So when that reality is recognized, then the grasping that makes that conditioning, the grasping of I, the ignorance that gives rise to conditioning, is eliminated, and then there is a transformation or a reversion of that consciousness conditionment. Then consciousnesses become wisdom. Is it clarifying your? So the thing is, I understand. It's an I. We think it's I. It's I because we don't see its reality. Grasping I is a fiction. When we grasp an I, it's a fiction. We think there is an I where in reality we can't find that. So, in fact, to say it simply, because there is experience, because we experiment, we think there is something experimented that is experienced. But if we look at what experiences as an entity, we can't find any entity. We can't find what experiences, really. So I'm sorry, maybe my question will be a bit out of our discussion. Quite often I hear people saying, oh, I can't enjoy the present moment. So that's a bit strange for me. So I hear that the past doesn't exist, the future hasn't come yet. And we can't really find the present. So how can we help those people so that they can enjoy, or maybe it's not the right word, but stop to follow all those thoughts linked to the past and to the future. So here Rinpoche says, I think we must distinguish two things. There is relative reality or relative truth, where we can talk about a past, a future, a present. We can talk about I. This is our conventions, it's our reality, our conventional reality. And it's useful to communicate, to function in the world. But if we really examine closely, ultimately it's not established. And having access to that ultimate is not something that, unless we have an immense merit and immense dispositions, it's not something we can access to very easily. So if we're not really already engaged on the Dharma path, if we haven't taken refuge and be interested in that subject, someone that is out of all of that, it's impossible to show him the intimate nature of mind. It's very hard. He won't be open to that. So it's not linked to the present, like he would just grasp the present moment as a present, something that exists, that has a time span, that has a duration. So she says, those people won't look at their own mind, and they will see, like for example on TV, happy people. And so here Rinpoche says the reason, and we will see that in the text, the reason why we accomplish virtuous actions, offerings, discipline, meditation, all the time we give to studying Dharma, everything is done for ultimate discrimination, in order to obtain Yeshe, primordial wisdom. So everything is very subtle. It's not inaccessible, but we need some predispositions for that. It's very subtle. For example, in Mahayana Utandra Chandra, there is Gotra question, like the dispositions, the affiliations, sometimes translated. For example, some people don't have the predispositions to turn towards the Buddha nature. They have veils, hinderings, very thick, thin hinderings because of their grasping, their different belief. So then, again, the question is, so what can we do for those people? And Rinpoche says, the most important here is to cultivate the qualities that orientate us towards the discovery of that reality. For example, qualities of loving kindness, compassion, those qualities, and the qualities of the Four Immeasurable or Mahavihara, or just following causality law, discipline, and to ask ourselves the question, to be open to that kind of question, because here many people don't even think about it. They don't even wonder about it. They don't even have any interest to ask themselves that question. So it depends the person, the circumstances, the causes, conditions. So just being able to orientate people to virtuous actions, to qualities like loving kindness, this is extremely meritorious, and they will get a great benefit out of it. But the best way to teach it is to be an example, ourselves to be an example of it. Being ourselves loving and kind. And in that way, you can teach animals, you can teach foreigners who don't even know your language. They will understand your kindness, your loving kindness. They will also feel it themselves. And then you have taught us, you have inspired them, and they will develop those qualities themselves. They will be inspired. So I have a deep question about mind's true nature, from which I think life is linked to mind. When life is created, mind is omnipresent in life. When we die, our conditioned mind, according to our good and bad actions and our progress, will take rebirth in different, more or less favorable conditions. But, so that's a question. So the bodhisattva, how is it for him? Because mind has no beginning nor end. For example, a Buddha, does he have a clean mind, or has he joined the universal mind which is without beginning nor end? And he can be anyone at any time, whenever he wants, in a stable way. So here Rinpoche answers. All these reflections are really interesting, but we will see that whatever decision we take, there are difficulties. For example, if we think that the Buddha becomes one, with what does he become one? If you are already one, why, when the Buddha attains enlightenment, all the beings didn't attain enlightenment? Why is it different? If there are different beings, how does Buddha's enlightenment make sense for us? It's peculiar to the Buddha, it's particular to the Buddha. All sentient beings, do all sentient beings have predisposition to attain enlightenment? We can have all those questions. In brief, all sentient beings are neither one nor identical. It's emptiness. Often, to try to understand, we imagine things like something is, or something is different, or everything is one. But no substance is, we can't find any substance, nor being, nor non-being, nor both at the same time, nor the opposite. No reification is ever possible. So we always reify all the time, of course, but no reification is any real. Even if we reify, we imagine something that doesn't correspond to reality. Whatever we reify, it's a fiction, it's artificial. However, we want to observe reality as it is, really, directly, without any fiction or projection or artifact. We just want to observe reality as it is, without any denigration. And that reality can't be found as distinct. Thank you. So I need a practical advice linked to one emotion. I'm new in Dharma, and one emotion I'm probably cultivating and I'm wondering about is gratitude. It's very present, and I'm wondering about it because it may be risky. So I come from a Christian background. So in Buddhism, gratitude in a practical way makes me wonder because it really brings me into duality. So maybe I'm saying it in a gross way. Is gratitude cultivated in Buddhism, and how? How does one cultivate gratitude in Buddhism? So Rinpoche answers, yes, gratitude is really cultivated in Buddhism and is very important. So for us who don't observe ultimate reality, we are in conventional truth, in fiction, where there is I and other, and we use it we don't ignore our thought. We're going to use it, we're going to refine it, we're going to refine our way of interacting, thinking, see our situation towards ourselves and others, and this is going to bring us to recognize our ultimate nature, meaning the natural state of our mind. For bodhicitta, for example, gratitude is very important in general way, and especially in the framework of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is preceded by gratitude. For example, there is a 7-step method for generating bodhicitta, which are the following. The first one is because we understand that we had immeasurable number of life in the past. We know that we have been an immeasurable amount. We have been connected to so many sentient beings, immeasurable sentient beings, and all those beings have been an immeasurable amount of time our mother and father, and they have been kind and loving to us. They've helped us. So here the first step is to recognize beings as our mother and father of the past. Second step is to remember their kindness, recollect their kindness. And doing so, first we look at this life's parents' kindness, seeing that because of that kindness I cherish my parents, and that kindness exists within for all sentient beings, and all of them have expressed it to us. And this brings us to the third step, gratitude. Because there is gratitude, there is love, loving kindness, metta, meaning there is a real intention to establish all sentient beings in happiness. We want their good, we want their happiness truly. We want their temporary happiness and also their ultimate happiness. And the next step brings us to compassion. Love brings us to compassion, meaning here we observe that all beings are in confusion, deluded. They all want happiness, and because of their illusion, because of not knowing, they are actually gathering causes and conditions for suffering, for future sufferings. They are just perpetuating again suffering. So even though they try to get happiness, they are just cultivating unhappiness and suffering. And seeing that, we feel a real compassion, And here it's the wish to liberate beings from suffering. We want to take them beyond suffering. And this takes us to the 6th point, which is a kind of meditation here. It is called Lakpar Samba in Tibetan, superior intention, which means here intention without any personal interest or expectation. We want to help beings, whatever it costs us, whatever it implies for us. We are ready to do anything to help beings. We accept anything to help beings. And that kind of state of mind is the basis for generating bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the vow or the intention also as an engagement to apply ourselves from now on to do sentient beings benefit. We engage to always do sentient beings benefit. So this is relative bodhicitta. In here we can see how important gratitude is. Because of gratitude, we progress towards loving kindness. Here we also have to clarify, when we talk about loving kindness, sometimes we hear it as a sacrifice. We think we have to sacrifice to help others. But here we have to understand this is our ultimate good. Meaning that the one who has loving kindness cultivated does it for loving kindness itself. Meaning that if you have loving kindness, you instantly get benefits for yourself. Your mind is forever liberated from hostility, hatred, and anger, and all that are the source of so much suffering for ourselves. So developing bodhicitta, loving kindness, and compassion are for our own interest, our own benefit, as well as mean to help other sentient beings. There is no distinction or separation between helping others and helping ourselves. Okay, so maybe we're gonna leave it here for this morning. It's time. If you have other questions, keep them for later. We take some time this afternoon for that. And we'll go on with the teaching, of course. At the end of the teaching, I will give some space for questions, for discussion. Thank you for your attention. Please join me in dedicating the merits of that session.